To you first, Ron,
Okay, very good.
and then Roger. And emergency management from our National Emergency Management Agency, and also Ron Devlin, the Regional Manager from Fire and Emergency New Zealand. I'm just going to start by giving a brief synopsis of overnight weather and effects, and I do have some hot off the press updates around some of the impacts we're seeing across the region, which I'll share shortly. As people won't be surprised to hear, we have experienced widespread heavy rain across the region, starting from yesterday evening through to the early hours of this morning, and there was also heavy winds overnight. In some places that rain was more bands of heavy rain coming through, and then in other parts of the region we've had more heavy, solid, ongoing rain for periods of time. The weather system is sitting slightly further south now than forecast, with a heavy band of rain currently passing over the North Shore and the central city out to the west, but that now appears to be moving south, and we're hopeful that that will be the end of this last heavy section of rain that we've been experiencing. We will be getting a more detailed update from Met Service a little bit later this morning, so we don't quite have that to hand, but at the moment the information we have is that the red warning north of Orewa will expire at 8 a.m. this morning, and the orange warning that's in place for the rest of the region will expire at 10 o'clock as originally set down. So overnight, the first part of the evening or the night was relatively quiet for us in terms of call-outs, but that activity has ramped up as we've headed into the early morning hours at the most recent times. And Ron will talk a wee bit more about that from a Fire and Emergency New Zealand perspective. Just a couple of quick hot off the press updates. So we are aware that we've had trees come down in a number of locations, including on a house in Mount Albert and Whitford. And that's one of the things that I would really like to just stress for people. Whilst the rain might move off today, there is still a chance of impacts from things like tree fall because the ground is so wet that it creates a level of instability, particularly if the wind picks up, and given the wind we had last night, people might be waking up to find damage on their property that they haven't expected and may not know that until they sort of get out and about. So just really being vigilant throughout the day, even if the rain has passed. We've also had reports of flooding and some landslips in the Devonport area, and we have a building inspector en route to a landslip on Hollyoak Road as well. So just highlighting that land instability and that possible tree fall on top of the surface water conditions that we're dealing with. We have had a low number of people through our new evacuation centres, so we stood up overnight some additional evacuation points for people if they needed them in Wellsford, Warkworth and Kumeu, and I'm pleased to report that those weren't needed other than the Wellsford evacuation centre where we did host a family overnight. There may be some different information that comes in early this morning if we've had a change in time, but that was the information I was given when I came in. I won't talk to Fire and Emergency New Zealand because I've got Ron with me, so that might be a good time now to pass to him and let him speak directly to the area that his team looks after.
Morena, tēnā koutou katoa, Ron Devlin, Fire and Emergency. Good morning, everybody. I guess, since about 6 o'clock this morning, we've dealt with about 53 weather-related incidents. We had a quietish night, very high winds, as most of you would have personally experienced out there, and just a nod to Rachel's point there that you may be waking up this morning and finding some damage across your section. So let's be aware of that and be aware of the risk that sits out there around the possibility of fallen trees. The events this morning, mostly across Devonport, Northcote, Ellerslie, Mount Albert, Green Lane, as where we are seeing them. But again, I want to stress that the weather didn't reach the point that or the rain didn't reach the point that was predicted, and so which is a great thing, and so we're quite comfortable with the amount of events that we're attending. This is business as usual for Fire and Emergency. This is what we gear up for, and this is exactly what we do with our partners, police and ambulance, and Auckland Emergency Management. So we've more than actually got this. Our communication centres are in what we call multiple incident procedure, just currently. They are dealing with all 111 incidents and dealing with them in a precise and processed way. So there'll be no hold-up in that particular department. Our urban search and rescue teams are on standby for anything other than the work that they're doing, obviously, with the engineers here in Auckland Emergency Management. They're on standby for any additional events that may occur or may require their assistance. We would ask people to only call 111 if it's life-threatening or property-threatening. If your basement is flooded, just hold on to that call for now. That doesn't really need to be a 111 call, but we will get to it if you need our assistance. The current forecasted weather, we kind of feel, will probably be passed by about midday, but we will continue to remain in a state of readiness with an ability to respond to anybody's events as and when you have them. I just want to assure people that the current volume of calls is well within Fire and Emergency's business as usual operations, and we are ready to support you as and when you need it. So thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Ron. And I just again want to really reiterate our thanks and acknowledgement of the work that our first responders are doing. There is, obviously it's been an incredibly busy couple of days, and they really have been doing an amazing job of both maintaining their BAU, their business as usual activity, on top of responding to this event. I do have a couple of updates from Auckland Transport. I don't have someone with me from Auckland Transport this morning, but I have got some information from them, so I'll just go through that, and then I'll pass over to Roger Ball, our Director of Civil Defence from Emergency Management. So just information from Auckland Transport. So Auckland Transport is responding to multiple flood events across the network at the moment, and they've had reports of the Awhitu Peninsula being cut off due to multiple slips. So they are currently following that up, and as we get more information to hand, we'll pass that on to you. Again, the key message really is from them: consider staying home or travelling later in the day once the heaviest periods of rain have passed, and do not walk, drive or cycle through floodwaters because it can pose a serious risk to your health and safety. If you do need to go out in your car today, plan ahead before you leave. Check the AT mobile app or website for public transport information, and at www.atgov.nz/weatherwatch for the latest information about road closures. And I think, the other part to that is just there needs to be a level of patience because the road situation is dynamic. So we may have a road that is open when you start your journey that becomes closed while you're on your journey. And so people just will need to allow extra time for travel and really some patience for the situation that we've got there. But be assured that Auckland Transport is working very hard to resolve issues as they arise. We do have some new road closures as at 7:30 this morning, and this is in addition to closures available on the AT website, which I think was last updated slightly before 7:30. So Coatesville Riverhead Highway between Ridge Road and Wake Road, Tamaki Drive, South Eastern Arterial, Carbine to Motorway. Scenic Drive now has 4 slips. Tahinga Road, there's a detour through Bethel's Road. Wood Bay Road at 110 due to a slip. Fred Thomas Drive and Wairoa Road is open, but there is a watch in place. So again, quite a dynamic situation. Really check the information on those sites that I mentioned before you travel. Roads to avoid at the moment: State Highway 1, Northcote to Esmond. There has been some closures there and restricted lanes operating in each way. And flooding at State Highway 20 around Onehunga and State Highway 1 at Green Lane, where there's one lane closed southbound. In terms of the train service, no train services on the Western Line currently. 3 train units are currently stuck due to flooding and slips, and no passengers are on board. Eastern Line services are operating Manukau to Otahuhu in both directions, and the Southern Line is running Papakura to Panmure in both directions, but there is flooding between Orake and Glen Innes. In terms of buses, the Northern Busway is closed between Akaranga Station and Smales Farm Station. So just again, that general message of plan, check before you travel, and only travel if you really need to. leaving that, if possible, to after the worst of the weather has passed, perhaps later in the day. Just keep an eye on that forecast. Right, I'm now going to hand over to Roger Ball from our National Emergency Management Agency. Roger.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger Ball from National Emergency Management Agency, Morena Tātou. Just from our end, our 24/7 centre remained fully staffed and activated overnight as usual, and today the National Coordination Centre will also continue to be fully staffed in the bunker beneath the Beehive, supporting Auckland, but also Northland, which remains in a declaration of emergency, and the other regions which might be impacted by this event. When we did an assessment at first light this morning, from what we could see, this band of heavy rain has left Northland with some fresh downpour, but things seem there to be reasonably stable and the impact's not significant. You've heard from the Auckland controller about what's going on here, and that's working its way through. We will be watching this closely as it works its way through the Coromandel and perhaps Waikato. We are in very close contact with those regional civil defence emergency management groups in those regions, and we'll be providing support to them if required. But the indications at this early stage are that we may not have as much rain out of this event as was originally forecast. I just want to reiterate, as the Auckland controller has said, we do encourage people to please stay abreast of the public safety messages and updates on key social media channels, ATOC, Waka Kotahi, Met Service, Auckland Emergency Management, your local civil defence emergency management groups. Whether you're in Northland, Waikato, Bay of Plenty, please stay in touch with the local civil defence and infrastructure providers and their social media channels so you know what's going on. If you want some more general information about how to prepare, get ready for, recover from flooding, go to www.getready.govt.nz. There are some good resources there in te reo and other languages, and we will continue to support Auckland and the other emergency management groups as they work their way through this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. So just a few more updates from me before we end this update. So more civil defence centres. So we've got and will continue to operate our civil defence centres at the following locations. These sites do have additional sort of wraparound support services available on premise, so help with other needs beyond accommodation. So if there's people needing support in other ways, they can drop into those civil defence centres. Equally, you can also call us on our helpline 0800 22 2200. So we've got those centres stood up at Leonards Road School, St Leonards in Kelston, Massey University Albany campus, Massey University access via the Albany Expressway, Mana Tukutuku, 32 Riverton Drive, Randwick Park, and also we have a support service being operated out of Moana Nui Akiwa Pool and Leisure Centre in Mascot Ave, Mangere. Last night we stood up an additional 3 evacuation points for people that might need overnight accommodation or shelter, and they were at Warkworth Town Hall, Wellsford Community Centre and Cumu Community Centre. We will review the ongoing need for those given that it looks like the weather is now moving away from the region and down south. Just again, if you need information about where to go, you can always use that 0800 line, or you can drop into one of those civil defence centres. Keep an eye out for those evacuation centres and their opening arrangements. Lastly, I'm just going to cover off waste collection. So there may be some more tidying up, cleaning up that people are going to need to do after last night's and early morning's rain. And as you're aware, we've worked with the private sector partner operators to make available 8 facilities for disposal of storm flood damaged material for free for residents that are unable to cover the costs of disposing this themselves. We now have 9 facilities across the region that Aucklanders can access, and we're working on adding additional facilities. 240 people are already booked to go to the disposal facilities, and a number of customers and tonnage received from different facilities is yet to come. Over 230 customers have been to our Waitakere transfer station, receiving over 100 tonnes of waste to date. Just a reminder there, to access those transfer stations, please call us ahead in advance just so we can help make sure you have a smooth trip through and to help smoothing out some of the, the volume of people that might be needing to go through those centres so you don't have too much of a delay. Skip bins have been delivered to areas of communal need. A waste management plan is being developed and operationalised to address contaminated household waste. And New Zealand Defence Force operations teams and Task Force Green are assisting our solid waste team from Auckland Council at skip bin sites across the region. So the locations, we have skip bins at locations across the central, northwest and southern parts of the region. 23 bins ordered for central, 8 bins for northwest, and we have in the south 21 bins delivered, 68 on order and 73 further requested. As I mentioned, those skip bins are going into areas where there's sort of a joined up community need. So if you're in a community that's been impacted, look out to your usual community channels for information around that. In terms of our water supply, we've had significant impact on operations due to last night's rain. Additional staff and contractors were rostered on through the night and are available today. Tap water does remain safe to drink. Water reservoirs were filled across the Auckland region last night, and there is strong progress being made to resolve the water supply issues in the Titirangi and Glen Eden areas. Customers in those affected areas were surveyed last night and may be resurveyed today to understand whether their situation has changed, just so we're staying on top of what's happening for them. 10 wastewater pump stations were electrically damaged on Friday, and all pump stations are now running, with the Waido station running at a slightly reduced capacity. So some wastewater is still overflowing into the local waterway, and that's an area where I have heard the messages, just if you can, try not to use more water than necessary, just to help remove some of that load off that system. All 18 wastewater treatment plants are operational. And that is the information I have to share with you this morning. So there ends this morning's briefing. Thank you for joining us, ngā mihi. If there's any questions, we're happy to take them. I think we've got a few minutes for that. No? Thank you again. Thanks.